This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Isai. We're going to do something a little differently today. We've been had a multi-part series on the topic of the mystery of the Sambatyon, finding the 10 lost tribes, and the history of Akdamus. So we started off the shir from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Samach Yamid Beis, from various midrashim about this mystical river that shoots stones 6 days a week and rests on the Shabbos. And the Sambatyon was the testimony to Tornis Rufus Harasha that we in fact know the seventh day is Shabbos and that it's a day of rest. We spoke about the idea that the Aseres Hashvatim were exiled beyond the Sambatyon River because the Psukim say in Malachim they were exiled beyond Nahar Goizen, which the Ramban in Parshas Hazinu identifies as the Sambatyon River. We mentioned the various reports of the 9th century traveler Eldad Hadani, who, despite the fact that Ibn Ezra says is not a credible source, nevertheless many Rishonim, most notably Tosfos and Masechta Chulin and Daf Beis and the Mordechai and the Rosh, they do quote his Sfarim, the Sefer Hilchos Eretz Yisrael, and he testifies about the existence of lost Jews behind the Sambatyon. He even mentioned a legend that when the Levium were being exiled from Bavel and Nebuchadnezzar ordered them to sing Shira to him, which we know the famous medrash that the Levium bit off their lips. Well, Eldad Hadani reported that bit off their thumbs. Eldad Hadani reported that after that a cloud came and lifted them up and deposited them on the other side of the Sambatyon. And while we thought this was more of a fantastic tale, it's actually reported that way in Targum Yonasan Ben Uziel in Parshas Kisisa. And then we mentioned the connection between Akdamus and this story based on the Eliyah Rabbah. The Eliyah Rabbah wants to come to answer the Taz's question. The ancient custom was that on the first day of Shavuos, they would take out the Sefer Torah, they would lay in the Kriya, they would start B'chodesh hashlishi b'tzeis bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim b'chodesh hazeh bo'u midbar Sinai, and then the Balkari would chant Akdamus milen mishara Yeshusa, and the Taz asks, how are you allowed to do so in the middle of Kriyas HaTorah? How are you allowed to be mafsik in the middle of Kriyas HaTorah with this piyut? And therefore the Taz says that this custom is incorrect and Akdamus should be advanced before you lay in the Torah, and this is what we do in all of our shuls. But we mentioned the Eliyah Rabbah says no. The Eliyah Rabbah wants to answer the Taz's kasha, and the Eliyah Rabbah wants to say he found an ancient Germanic document which brings the whole story and history of Akdamus, and since it was written in a midbar, and the first pasuk of the Kriyas HaTorah on the first day of Shavuos is B'chodesh hashlishi l'tzeis bnei Yisrael b'yom hazeh bo'u midbar Sinai, midbar, we should lay in Akdamus in the middle of the Kriya. That's what the Eliyah Rabbah writes. So the Eliyah Rabbah is referencing a tale about the composition of Akdamus and that it was somehow composed in the midbar. So that's what we were in the middle of learning last time we got together. Composed by Moshe? Well, let's see. What we learned so far was that the Jews were in the Midbar Asya, and the Jews throughout history, especially after the advent of Christianity, suffered terribly. And they were always subject to the whim of the local king or emperor or governor. And there was one particularly benevolent king, but there was a koimer, there was a priest who had an ayin ra, but literally he would look at Yidden and he would kill them with his vision. He was a mechashef. And we can see this happened in the period of the Rishonim. And he came to the king and he said, well, your Jewish subjects do not accept Christianity, and we need to have a debate, and if they lose, we should wipe them out. And the king said, how can we do that? And ultimately he was successful in persuading the king to hold this debate. And the Jews were very frightened because how could they debate this priest? This priest had this X-ray vision. He could kill you just by looking at you. And they came to the conclusion the only way to save themselves is to send a messenger to the other side of the Sambatyon and bring back some of the... We said the Vilna Gaon said that those on the other side of Sambatyon are tzaddikim. Bring back one of those lost tribes, one of those lost tzaddikim, and only he would be able to be successful in combating and disputing this kaimer, this priest? Well, nobody wanted to go, and the reason is because in order to go across the Sambatyon, you can't cross it during the week because the river is shooting stones. It's perilous. Nobody could survive it, and the only way to go is to go on Shabbos when the river subsides. But that would entail Chilul Shabbos. But what could you do? It's Pikuach Nefashos for Klal Yisrael, so you need to go. The problem now that we discussed what exactly was the Chilul Shabbos. Either it was out of the Tchum, or they needed to go on a boat, or they needed to swim. But the issue here was that while they would be allowed to go to the other side for Pikuach Nefashos, the story reports they would not be able to return. Because that would not be Pikuach Nefashos. We ask the question, normally if you go on a mission to save someone, you're permitted to return. It could be that it would not apply in this situation, because the reason why you're permitted to return is because nobody would ever volunteer to save Jews if you would not be allowed to return. But it could be in this case, this wasn't a volunteer, it was imposed on the person. We weren't sure exactly. But it was a one-shot deal. How many times do you have witchcraft priests with X-ray vision? Right? It's not a common occurrence. Well, what we learned was they made a lottery, and who won the lottery? Somebody by the name of Rav Meir Shliach Tzibor, who was none other than the Rebbe of Rashi. He's an individual that's quoted by Rashi in a number of places. Rashi in Amos, Parak Gimel, Pasuk Yud Beis. Rashi in Tehillim, Parak Ayin Gimel, Pasuk Yud Beis. He's quoted by Tosfos in Masechta Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Aleph, by the Shivalei HaLeket. He was one of the Rabbeim of Rashi, and he was the one who it was his lot to go to the other side of the Sambatyon and save Klal Yisrael. Well, he had to divorce his wife, not to leave her as an aguna, and let's pick it up. That's where we're up to. We're in number 49. We're number 49. We're in the paragraph that begins, the third paragraph of number 49. Kol b'nei hakehila, the whole congregation, livu es Rav Meir ad michutz la'ir. They all accompanied Rav Meir outside the city. V'lo azvu es mekaymam, they did not forsake their place. Kol oid ra'u meirachaik. In other words, they waited there until he disappeared off into the distance. Again, we're in number 49, fourth paragraph. Rabbi Meir magil esas hanar. Rav Meir waited at the edge of the river. Obviously, he can't start traveling until Shabbos comes. Umechak el knisas haShabbos. He was waiting for Shabbos to enter. By the way, this would be very interesting. If we had access to the Sambatyon, we'd be able to be machriya, the machlokes between the Vilna Gaon and Rabbeinu Tam, as to when Shabbos begins and when Shabbos ends. I would presume that in deference to the Vilna Gaon, the Sambatyon becomes volatile at the Grozman, and in deference to Rabbeinu Tam, it continues going until the Zman of Rabbeinu Tam. But, we'll have to see for ourselves. Rabbeinu Meir magil esas hanar, u'mechaka l'knisas haShabbos. Miyad, k'shehifsik hanor la'ashach avonav. When the river stopped throwing stones, heicha Rabbeinu Meir laver hanar, Rabbeinu Meir began to cross the river. Liboy doifek bechazka. His heart pounded. Mechalelu haShabbos. He's desecrating the Shabbos. Shabbos kodshenu. But what could he do? Ach miyad mischazik u'benafshe. He strengthened himself. Harei ani hoylech l'man atzal nefashos banav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The only reason I'm going is to save the children of God. Yitein HaKadosh Baruch Hu latzlech l'darki. May God grant that I'm successful on my voyage. When Rav Meir finished these thoughts, he was already on the other side of the river. Rav Meir gets to his destination on Shabbos day. They recognize him as a Jew, and they immediately incarcerate him. Why? He's a Shabbos desecrator. And we mentioned a number of times in this location, they have a Sanhedrin and they judge capital offense. And when someone desecrates the Shabbos, they stone him to death.
Well, they couldn't do that on Shabbos.
Well, that's why they put him in jail until Sunday.
He didn't realize why he's coming?
Well, on Sunday, he sits before the Bezdin. They bring Rav Meir there, and he's frightened. And with great dread, he presents to the Bezdin and the Sanhedrin what his mission is and how he was sent to save Klal Yisrael. Then, the Shaila is, who will they send to the other side of the Sambatyon to represent the Yidden in this confrontation and the dispute with the priest? Well, they made a raffle, and sure enough, who won the raffle? A chayat. What's a chayat? The tailor. So this tailor got up, and he divorced his wife.
What happened to Ramesh Dilton? Wasn't he supposed to be the debater?
No, he was sent to the other side of Sambatyon to find the debater.
Oh, he
And
went
then-
to the other side of the
Yeah, Shari Lo'ilam Lo Yuchal Asa Beisai. He's not. So someone suggested they can marry each other's wives now. So it was Anyway, B'meshach HaShavua. Now this chayot can't travel back until when? Until the next Shabbos. So b'meshach Hashavua l'erev Shabbos bo yotzach ela darkoi. The next Shabbos, by the next Shabbos throughout the week, the tailor travels to the river, and at that point in time, says the story, Ruach HaKodesh was shoira on Rabbeinu Meir, and he was mechaber a piyut liturgy in honor of God, and that liturgy is Akdamus. And Akdamus gives Shavach to the Rebbeinu Shalom, speaks about the greatness of Klal Yisrael, the great reward in store for those who are involved in Torah. Rabbeinu Meir wrote it in Aramaic. Why? So that the angels should not understand the great praise and get jealous of us. Now, interestingly, Akdamus is like this. There are 90 stanzas in Akdamus. It goes through the Aleph Beis, then it goes through the Aleph Beis a second time, and at the end it says, and it spells out in an acrostic, Meir Bir Reb Yitzchak Yigdal B'Torah V'Masim Tovim Amen Chazak Ve'ematz. Got it? So those are the 90 stanzas of Akdamus. Aleph Beis, that's 22. Aleph Beis, Nach 22. And then Meir Bir Rabbi Yitzchak Yigdal B'Torah V'Masim Tovim Amen Chazak Ve'ematz.
He's talking about himself?
No, it wasn't about him, but that's just the style of Mechabrim. They would be Maram. It's spelled out. The first letter of Isan is spelled out. Meir Bir Rabbi Yitzchak, similar to what we have in Kabbalah Shabbos. L'shloimai. It's not about Reb Shlomo Al-Kabetz, but his name is alluded to in the Pismai. Okay. So Erev Shabbos, the tailor departs from his relatives and his friends and from all the Jews. Everybody wished him well. And finally, the Chayat takes leave of Rabbeinu Meir. And Rabbeinu Meir accompanies him to the edge of the river, and he hands him a document, and guess what that document was? Akdamus. And he asks him to please disseminate it among the Jewish people so that his name will not be forgotten among Klal Yisrael on the other side.
So he assumed that they would survive this debate.
I guess.
Otherwise, this whole thing was academic.
Why didn't Rabbi Meir go back?
Because he's not to go back. The only way to go back is if you're Mechala Shabbos. So the Chayat needed to go back to save Klal Yisrael. But Rabbeinu Meir, he was stuck over there. He was Meiser Nefesh, according to the story. Now you should know.
What about carrying on Shabbos?
He put it on the boat. Now, interestingly, the veracity of the story, we have to rely on the remez of the Eliyah Rabbah. The Eliyah Rabbah just writes that because Akdamus was composed in the Midbar, therefore we lane it after the pasuk B'chodesh HaShlishi b'Midbar Sinai. He doesn't give us any of these details. All of these details, we don't really have any way to know if they actually happened. We know something happened. We know there was some Maisa with Akdamus. Now this story appeared first in Yiddish, and it was published in many Yiddish books, and we have a translation Lashon HaKodesh. We don't know from Chazal that this story happened. So if you want to know, am I obligated to believe that this story happened? No. It's not part of the Messiah of Tar Shabal Peh. It's a story. It's a story. We do know Rabbeinu Meir Shliach Tzibur lived. We know he lived. Rashi quotes him numerous times. We know there's something up with Akdamus. That's from the Eliyah Rabbah. Exactly what happened, this is the story as we have it, and that's what it is. It's a story. It's passed down through the ages, but it's not. This is not Divrei Chazal. Okay, but let's see what the story is nevertheless. Some question the veracity of the Maisa. There's a sefer you have on the sheet here. The number 22, Taldoi Seo Mekarisel Shar Akdamus, says that this story does not have historical verification.
What does Art Scroll do?
Art Scroll, in the Art Scroll Akdamus, I do not believe it makes reference to this story.
I don't think so.
But as I mentioned, the Eliyahu Rabbah, who's one of the Gdolei Achronim, does make reference to the story, and that itself is significant. We know Rabbeinu Meir Rabbi Yitzchak was Rashi's Rebbe, and one other thing we do know is that he personally held many debates.
Who?
Rabbeinu Meir. Now, in this story, it wasn't him, but we do know historically that he debated many Christian theologians. In fact, his son was killed al Kiddush Hashem in the crusade of Tatnu 1096. So let's read out the story. Basically, Shabbos comes, and this tailor heads onto the boat, and the Jews on the other side have been waiting for him anxiously since the previous Shabbos. And as they're looking out to the horizon, they see a boat, they see a Yid on the boat, and they're filled with simcha that the Rebbe Shalom has made them successful in their mission. Okay. Well, Shabbos is over, and they send a message to the king that whenever you want to hold a debate, we are ready, we have our man, we're not afraid. So the king hears the words, he tells the priest to be prepared. And they set a date, and they set up a big stage. And the stage was located in a valley, surrounded by tall trees. And there was room for a crowd to gather and watch this public spectacle. Well, on the appointed date, the king, his officers, his advisors, the whole city, the whole region, the priest, the tailor, they ascend the stage. So what does the priest do? He takes off his glasses and he gives him a look, trying to, inject his venom into him like he's always doing. Nothing happens. After all, he's from the other side of the river. And everybody knows people from the other side of the river are immune to the X-ray vision of Christian priests. It's well known, right? And now the priest is starting to get nervous. And the priest decides, before we hold the debate, I want to make the king happy and entertain the king. I'm going to do some of my magic. So what does he do? He gets up to the stage and he takes 2 millstones, very big, heavy millstones. And he lifts them up and everyone's, whoa, ooh, how did he do it? It was magic. And then, with great brute force, he takes the 2 big millstones and he throws it up into the air. And all of a sudden, these 2 huge millstones are suspended in midair. And then the priest goes like this, and they start spinning and grinding in midair. And everybody is flabbergasted. Wow, there's no way the Jews are going to win this debate. And now the priest says, well, now you little tailor, you little Jewish guy, now you try something before we even start. He says, no problem. He says, look, you see these big tall trees? I'll make a deal with you. Either I'm going to bend one of these trees that reach up to the heavens, I'm going to bend it down to the floor, and you're going to come hold it. Or you bend it down, and I'll hold it. So the priest says, look, there's no way this guy is going to bend it down. I'll tell him to bend it, and I'll hold it down. So this little Yidula, he closes his eyes, he davens, he says, Shemois. He takes the tree, and he bends the tree. And he says, do me a favor, hold the tree down. Now the priest is shaking in his boots. There's no way he could possibly hold the tree down. But what could he do? He accepted the challenge. So he puts on a facade, he's smiling to everybody, thinking, how in the world is he going to hold it down? The Chayat says, bekavod. He gives the priest to hold it down. All of a sudden, when the tailor lets go, the tree shoots the priest up into the air. Guess where he lands? In between the 2 millstones that were grinding. It grinds him to smithereens. It pulverizes him. And, priest X-ray vision dust comes pouring down. And of course all the Jews were besimcha, and they sang and they danced, and the Rav told them, Bizman hazeh, we're not able to bring a carbon toida, but in gratitude to Hashem, let us all dedicate ourselves to the Torah and thank this tailor from the Aseres HaShvatim that he spared us from the wrath of the king and the wrath of the tailor. The story ends, this happened in the year 4,862.
Who was the tailor?
4,862. Who is the tailor?
You want to make this?
You need a hem or something? I don't know.
You gotta know.
Doesn't say. 4,862, right? So we're talking about 1,000, we are talking,
52.
985 years ago. Okay? We're talking about 900. We're talking about in the times of Rashi. Do we have any other evidence about this story? No. It's a story. It's a legend. There is hints to it in the words of the El Yarabba, but again, this is something that has been passed down through the ages, and of course, this is the history of Akdamus that was written by Rabbeinu Meir Bar Yitzchak, who that we know he wrote Akdamus, and we know he was Rashi's Rabbi, and he concludes Akdamus with the words Tzvi ve'isra Ivan v'umesarlan oiraisa. God wanted us, He desired us, and therefore He gave us the Torah. So this is a very beautiful pismine and some of the history of it. Now, Rabbi Isai, let's end off with some facts about the 10 tribes.
The king gave it.
After that, he bought some real estate on the other side. Then he made a castle.
Excuse me?
Yeah, we got off the hook.
We wanted to debate, the other guy disappeared.
Okay.
We won by default.
Let's talk a little bit about the Asas HaShvatim. Are they coming back or are they not coming back? So there are 2 Gemaras you have to learn. Now we're not learning stories, we're learning Torah Misinai. And there are 2 Gemaras that you have to know. Number 26 and 27, a Gemara in Sanhedrin and a Yalkut Shemaini. A Gemara in Sanhedrin and a Gemara Megillah. The Gemara says like this. First we have a Machlokes Tanoim, and then we have a Gemara. Aseres, number 26, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, Kuf Yud Amid Beis. Aseres Hashvatim, Einon Asidin Lachzar. The 10 tribes, they're never coming back. Shenemar, Vayashlichem El Eretz Acheres, Kayom Hazeh. He cast them to another land as of this day. Ma Hayoim Hoylech Ve'enoi Chayzer. Just like this day it goes and it will never return. Afheim. So to the 10 tribes. Holchem, they went. Ve'enam Chayzrim. They will never return. For example, look at number 9 and 10. It says in the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Ashur captured the Shomron, and he exiled Klal Yisrael, and he situated them in Techalach, and Techavar, and to Nahar Goizen, and Arei Madai. Says the Tanakama, they went there, they are never coming back. This is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says the 10 tribes are never, ever, ever coming back. Rabbi Lezer Omer, he argues, Kayom Hazeh, Ma Yoim Mafil Omer, just like this day, it turns dark, the night comes, but then day comes again. Af Aser Sashvatim, so to the 10 tribes, She'afil Olahen, it was dark for them. Kach Asid Har Lahem, it will illuminate for them and they will return. That's the opinion of Rabbi Lezer. One more machlokes. Tanu Rabbanon. Do the 10 tribes have a share in the world to come? Says Rabbi Akiva, not at all. Ein lohem chelek lo'olam haba shenemar vayitshem Hashem yalad masam be'af uvechema uveketzav gadol vayiteshem Hashem yalad masam ba'olam hazeh vayashlichem el eretz acheretz lo'olam haba divrei Rabbi Akiva. Says Rabbi Akiva, vayitshem yalad masam is this world. Vayashlichem el eretz acheretz is olam haba. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda ish kvar akoyim no mishum Reb Shimon. If their actions are like today, einon chayzim, they ain't coming back. V'im lav, but if they're not like today, chayzim, they will come back. In other words, if they keep up their actions, they lost their share in olam haba. If they do tshuva, they'll get it back. Rabbi Omer ba'im heim olam haba. Shenemar ba'yom hahu yitaka b'shofar gadol. Uvau ha'ovdim b'yeretz Ashur v'hanidachim b'yeretz Mitzrayim. B'yeretz Ashur refers to the 10 Shvatim. So we have a great machlokes if the 10 tribes are coming back. We have a machlokes if they have a share in the world to come.
because they left Elicha.
No, they didn't leave Ara. They were exiled already. They were exiled because they were Ovid Avodah Zarah. The Gemara in Megillah says something which is very important and not so well known.
Even if they do tshuva, they're not coming back.
Rabbi Akiva says they ain't coming back and they ain't going to Olam Haba. They lost it.
Because they're not going to do tshuva, or
I don't know if Rabbi Akiva could predict that they're not going to do tshuva, but one thing he could predict, he knows that they don't have a share in Olam Haba. Maybe because they didn't do tshuva. Rabbi Akiva, who came after them, is saying they did not do tshuva.
What does he do with Kol Yisrael, Yisrael, Chelek,
Chutz mei, Chutz mei, all those. Well, they're part of the chutz. Comes the Gemara Megillah. So that means, according to Rabbi Akiva, if I were to ask Rabbi Akiva would come into this room and say, well, if the 10 tribes are not coming back, then Rabbi Akiva would say, everyone in this room is not from the 10 tribes. That means Rabbi Akiva would be able to say, we're all from Yehuda or Binyamin. But there's one caveat. Look at number 28. And that is, the Gemara is talking about the time of Chilkiyahu HaKohen, when he was doing overdue repairs in the Beis HaMikdash, and they found the Sefer Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, and it was open to the pasuk that said, God will carry out your king in exile. And they wanted to get the prophetic meaning of this, so they sent word to a Neviah, a prophetess. Which prophetess? Chulda HaNeviah. And the Gemara asks, Chulda HaNeviah, there was a Navi at the time. Where was Yirmiyah? So you say, I asked my Rav, I went to Chulda, I didn't ask the Navi. No. This is a very important rule. You need to take it to the top. You need to take it to the top. Don't say, I asked my rabbi. You gotta take it to the top. And if Yirmiyah is around, they should have gone to him. So the Gemara says, where did Yirmiyah go? Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Yirmiyah lo have a hasam. Yirmiyah was not there. Shaholach lahachzir aseras hashvatim. Yirmiyah took a trip to the other side of Sambatyon to bring back the 10 tribes. And did he? He brought him back. Uminolan da'ahadar, how do we know Yirmiyah? We're talking about Yirmiyah before Churban Bayis Rishon. How do I know he brought him back? The pasuk says like this: the sale will not return to the seller. The sale, the moicher, will not return to his memkar. Now, normally you do get your field back. Why? Because of Yovel. But Yovel does not apply if Klal Yisrael is not living in Eretz Yisrael. So 1 second. It says the sale will not return, which means that Yovel does not apply. But 1 second. Yovel was already batel. So why would the Navi have to say, the day will come that Yovel will be batel? Yovel was already batel. The answer is it must be Yovel was already batel. But then a time came that it went back into effect, and then it became batel again. How's that? It was batel when Ashur exiled Asar Sashvatim. So now the Jews are not all on their land. So now there's no Yovel. But when Yirmiyah brought back the 10 Shvatim, Yovel came back. Says the Gemara Megillah, Yirmiyah brought back all 10 Shvatim. So what's the problem? It's a steer to the Gemara, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. Rabbi Akiva says they ain't coming back. And the Gemara Megillah says Yirmiyah brought them back. So did they come back? Did they not? Rabbi Akiva says the 10 tribes are not coming back. And Rabbi Yochanan said Yirmiyah brought back the 10 tribes. It's a big problem, right? Adar ya, adar nish. Did they come back? Did they not come back? You ready for this? You ready? On the words of the Mishnah, on Daf Kuf Yud Amud Beis in Sanhedrin, when Rabbi Akiva says, "Asaras hashvatim einon asidin lachzor shenemar vayashlichim al eretz acheres kayom hazeh," Deve Rabbi Akiva, fragt Rashi, v'ha da'amrinan begamar de Yirmiyah hechziron. Yirmiyah brought them back. Loi shehechziron kulan, ela meksasan hechzer. He only brought back some of them. So if I were to ask you, are there people today among us who are from Shevet Ruvain?
Maybe.
Yes. Shimon? Yes. Yisachar? Zebulun? All the 10 tribes are represented. How many did he bring back? We don't know exactly. What about the rest, or the majority that he didn't bring back? Will we see one day? Tishbi, Yatari, it's Kushya, Zavayas. Rabbi Kiva says they ain't coming back. Rabbi Lezer says they're coming back. But one thing is for sure, some of them have already come back, and that's what Yirmiyah did. Says in Gemara Megillah, Daf Yadalet Amud Beis.
So it's safe to say that some got some from the because everything else, no?
Yeah. I think most of us are from Shevet Yehuda. I have some kind of tradition. I'm from Shevet Yehuda, but who knows? Anybody's guess. But they're all Shiftei Yisrael are represented. Let's end off with the following. And that is, here we are, we're in the year 2016. Every square inch of planet Earth has presumably been scouted out and discovered and explored. You could go onto a computer program and they'll show you a picture of basically every square inch in the planet. So where is the Sambatyon River? Someone tell me. You want to say 200 years ago there's a Sambatyon River that shoots up stones. It's in the Far East, in India, between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and in the mountain region over there. But we've been there, you know. We looked for Osama. We didn't see the Sambatyon River. We've been everywhere. So we haven't encountered the Sambatyon. So what does that mean for us? Well, this is a question that the Maral addresses. And let me explain to you what he says in my terms. And that is like this. You ever lose car keys? Lose your car keys? Yeah. And you ever find them? You ever find them in the place where you look 10 times and right? I have, right? What happened? Until God wants you to see something, you don't see it. And when He wants you to see it, you see it. Hakol b'cheskas sumin ad shakadosh baruch hu me'er sinan. Everything is hidden until God wants you to see it. So says Maral, especially when it comes to the Sambatyon River, God specifically wanted to hide something. So now you have a question. So then, how come I don't see it? That's a question. When God doesn't want you to see something, everybody knows we don't see it. How many times have we looked for things? We have no clue where they are. And then finally, you daven a little bit, and then you find it in the place where you looked 100 times. Amar Rabbi Binyamin, Hakol b'cheskas sumin ad shakadosh baruch hu me'er sinan. Where is this Sambatyon River? Your guess is as good as mine. We don't know. Some say in Africa, some say in Asia. I don't know where it is. There is some concept of Sambatyon River. Let's read that inside, and then we'll conclude this series. We're on the final page, which is page 11, the middle column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. V'yesh b'nei adam oimrim, there are some people who say shechachmei ha'umayis heim shekasvu makoim umakoim b'chol yishuv haaretz. The sages of the world, the geographers and the makers of maps, they've already mapped out every square inch of planet Earth. Every inch of this world is already documented. Nobody has found the 10 tribes except for Mishpacha magazine. No one has discovered the 10 tribes. Right? Actually, in the last couple of weeks, come out every week, they have a different write-up about a different community, whether in China or India, that has some claim to the 10 tribes. And there is some evidence that perhaps there are many tribal
Practices.
practices of whether in India or China, which are similar to Judaism, and or Ethiopia, and there is question. Maybe there is Jewish blood mixed in there, but nobody has identified with veracity. These are the 10 lost tribes. Why not? Ve'ein raya misham, says Maral. It's not a proof. Bishvil davar zeh hevel yivtza pm. Their mouth speaks emptiness. Ki efshar ve'efshar sheyiyah makam echad be'eretz shelo noda lahem. It is very plausible. There is a place in a land that is not known. God could have separated it from civilization through mountains. Because who knows? There are still places in the world that maybe Hashem has not chose to show us at this point. Look at the last 4 lines. Vashem Yisbarach Gazar al Yisrael Hapirod V'Hevdel. God decreed on us separation and Havdalah Ad Shiur Haratzim and Yisrael Sheikavim, until Hashem decides to gather them in. That's what we daven every day. Tekab b'shofar gadol l'cheruseinu v'sanes l'kabetz gol yoseinu v'kabetzenu yachad me'arba kanfos haaretz. The Vilna Gaon says, we learned this, it's on your sheets. The Gaon tells us that there are 3 places that Jews have been exiled. The Asar Sashvatim were exiled behind the mountains of darkness, behind the Sambatyon river, and of course Klal Yisrael is spread to all 4 corners of the world. And these 3 exiles are alluded to in Tekab b'shofar gadol l'cheruseinu. 1, the sun is the kabetz gol yoseinu. 2, the kabetzenu yachad me'arba kanfos haaretz. So we're all mispalel. We should be zocheh to see ubo ha'ivdim b'eretz Ashur v'anidachim b'eretz Mitzrayim. We should all go up. V'hishtachavu lahar v'hishtachavu v'har kodshay in Yerushalayim Havenuya v'her v'yameinu Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.